Just saying names like Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Dwayne McDuffie, and Todd McFarlane brings certain images to your mind. But today, I'd like to talk about some other creators who may not be as famous, but are trailblazers just the same. New York City in the 1970s, a time of bankruptcy, urban decay, high crime rates, also a time of a cultural renaissance in art, music, and nightlife. This is the era that Christopher Priest arrives at Marvel. Priest, then known as Jim Owsley, entered the comics industry as a Marvel Comics intern in 1978. He would join its editorial staff in 1979, working for Paul Lakin as a managing editor on Crazy Magazine and becoming the first African-American editor in mainstream comics. He next became assistant editor for Larry Hama on the Conan titles. It wasn't until 1983 where Owsley made his debut as a writer with issue number 1 of the Falcon miniseries. He later became full editor of all Spider-Man books from 1985 to 1986. Professional and personal disagreements eventually led to his leaving Marvel. Owsley's writing tenure on Power Man and Iron Fist concluded with Iron Fist's controversial death. Moving to DC Comics, Owsley had a run as a writer of Green Lantern, when the character was exclusive to the anthology series Action Comics Weekly. In 1993, he became part of the group of writers and artists that launched Milestone Media, a comic book publisher affiliated with DC Comics. He said that he had intended to become the company's editor-in-chief, but personal issues forced him to scale down his involvement. However, one of the highlights of this period is that he co-created Static, who of course would become the breakout star of Milestone Comics. Shortly afterward, he legally changed his name from Jim Owsley to Christopher Priest. He stated he was unaware of the British science fiction novelist Christopher Priest. After a decade-long absence from comics, Priest returned in 2014 to write a Quantum and Woody miniseries for Valiant Comics. He wrote the Rebirth version of Deathstroke in 2016 for DC Comics. He became the writer for Justice League in December 2017, but was replaced by Scott Snyder in 2018. Priest contributed a story to the Black Panther Annual No. 1, released in February 2018. In 2019, he wrote Vampirella for Dynamite Comics and U.S. Agent for Marvel Comics. Priest is also a singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist. He's a music producer who has written and produced dozens of tracks for himself and others. Priest is also an ordained minister, making Christopher Priest an actual priest. Love and Rockets may be unlike any other comic series ever. Written and drawn by the same two creators for over 40 years and remaining independent the entire time. The Hernandez brothers produce their stories independently of each other. Gilbert usually focuses on characters in the fictional Central American village of Palomar. The stories are slice-of-life based, but sometimes include magical elements. The Locust story of Jaime center on a social group in an unnamed city that looks and feels a lot like LA. His main characters are friends and sometimes lovers, Maggie and Hobie. Raised in Oxnard, California, the Hernandez brothers had been reading comics since childhood. Even though they collected Marvel's superhero books, it was the day-in-the-life storytelling and art of comics like Dennis the Menace and Little Archie that really inspired the brothers, especially Jaime. Originally, the brothers created comics for their own enjoyment. The stories they told were about things they knew, LA's punk scene and the queer community. And also, it was very important to both Jaime and Gilbert to focus on Latino characters. The Hernandez brothers self-published the first issue of Love and Rockets in 1981, then sent a copy of their book to the Comics Journal, a magazine published by Fantagraphics. They were hoping a review by the Comics Journal would help them sell more copies of the book. Gary Croft, the co-founder of Fantagraphics, was so impressed that not only did he review their book, he offered them a publishing deal. Love and Rockets became one of the biggest indie books of the 1980s. Jaime Hernandez quickly became one of the hottest artists in the industry. Soon both Marvel and DC made offers to the brothers. However, both Jaime and Gilbert chose to stick with Fantagraphics and keep doing things their own way. The magazine temporarily stopped publication in 1996. However, in 2001, the brothers revived the series, and Love and Rockets has continued ever since. Another thing that makes Love and Rockets different from almost any other ongoing series is that the characters have aged alongside their creators. Maggie has gone from a 20-something in the local punk scene to a woman in her early 60s. And through the years, she's been involved in a series of relationships and held various jobs, just like a real person. It seems the brothers have no intention of stopping Love and Rockets, as characters have had their own children and an entire new generation has developed over time.
Leading the way are the Hernandez brothers, the creators of Love and Rockets, which is, at 11 years, the oldest continuously published Latino comic book.
Sure, we had something to do with it. I think we had a lot to do with it. And part of the reason is just that we've stayed and kept doing it and you know, suffered the slings and arrows, you know, that sort of thing, the sticks and stones.
Jackie Orms is known as the first African-American female cartoonist. She's the creator of the comic strips Torchy Brown and Patty, Joe, and Ginger. Jackie Orms was born Zelda Maven Jackson on August 1st, 1911, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to parents William Winfield Jackson and Mary Brown Jackson. Her father, William, was the owner of a printing company and a movie theater. He was killed in a car accident in 1917. This resulted in the then 6-year-old Jackie and her older sister Dolores being placed in the care of their aunt and uncle for a brief period. Eventually, Jackie's mother remarried, and the family relocated to the nearby town of Monongalia, where she graduated from high school in 1930. Orms drew and wrote stories throughout high school. She was the arts editor from 1929 to 1930 for her school's yearbook. This is where her earliest efforts as a cartoonist can be seen in the caricatures of her school's students and teachers. It was during this period that she wrote a letter to the editor of the Pittsburgh Courier, a weekly African-American newspaper. The then editor, Robert Van, wrote back. This correspondence led to her first writing gig, covering a boxing match. Her coverage of subsequent matches led to her becoming a huge fan of the sport. She also worked as an editor and as a freelance writer, writing on police activity, court cases, human interest topics, just about anything she could get involved in. While she enjoyed being a reporter, what she really wanted to do was draw. Orm's first comic strip, Torchy Brown in Dixie to Harlem, first appeared in the Pittsburgh Courier on May 1st, 1937. Since the Courier had 14 city editions, she was read pretty much from coast to coast. The strip, starring Torchy Brown, was about a Mississippi teen who found fame and fortune singing and dancing in the Cotton Club. Torchy's journey from Mississippi to New York mirrored the journey of many African Americans during the Great Migration. Through Torchy Brown, Orms became the first African American woman to produce a nationally appearing comic strip. Orms moved to Chicago in 1942. She soon began writing occasional articles and briefly a social column for the Chicago Defender, one of the nation's leading black newspapers. For a few months, at the end of World War II, her single-panel cartoon, Candy, about an attractive and wisecracking housemaid, appeared in the Defender. By August 1945, Orms was back at the Courier with her biggest hit, Patty, Joe, and Ginger, a single-panel cartoon which ran for 11 years. It featured a big sister, little sister setup, with the insightful and socially, politically aware child as the only speaker, and the beautiful adult woman as a sometime pinup figure and fashion mannequin. Orms contracted with the Terry Lee Doll Company in 1947 to produce a doll based on her cartoon character. The Patty Joe doll was on shelves in time for Christmas and was the first American black doll to have an extensive upscale wardrobe. The dolls were popular with both black and white children. In December 1949, however, Orm's contract with the Cherry Lee Company was not renewed, and production ended, which made the Patty Joe dolls scarce and very valuable today. Starting August 19, 1950, the Courier began 8-page color comics inserts, where Orms reinvented her Torchy character in a new comic strip, Torchy in the Heartbeats. This Torchy was a beautiful, independent woman who finds adventure while seeking true love. The strip is probably best known for its last installment, on September 18, 1954, when Torchy and her doctor boyfriend confront racism and environmental pollution at the same time. Orms used Torchy in Heartbeats as a sounding board for several big issues of the time. In a 1985 interview for the Chicago Reader, Orms said she was anti-war. Quote, "I was anti-everything that's smelly." Torchy presented an image of a black woman that was in contrast to the stereotypes of the time. In an interview, Orms said, "I have never liked dreamy little women who can't hold their own." Orms tackled social and political issues, everything from race to sex to environmental pollution. Every aspect of her life, the cartoonist was involved in humanitarian causes. Her passion for left-wing ideologies after World War II eventually led to an investigation by the FBI. Orms' creations not only defied expectations for black women, but gave her readership strong models for what the next powerful generation could become. She died of a cerebral hemorrhage in Chicago on December 26, 1985. Orms was posthumously inducted into the National Association of Black Journalists Hall of Fame in 2014 and was inducted into the Will Eisner Comic Industry Hall of Fame in 2018. Thanks for spending some time talking comics and comics legends. If there's somebody that you'd like us to do a story on, leave it in the comments. While you're down there, like, subscribe, and do all those YouTube things. Till next time, see you in the wolves den.